Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk about difficult people at work, how to cope and how to win. This was written by Arthur Bell, PhD, and Dayle Smith, PhD. And the book looks like that. And this goes kind of in line with some of the stuff we were talking about in earlier videos today, so I wanted to follow up this. There's some other books like this. How to Deal with Jerks at Work is a good one. That one cracked me up a good bit. But it's like this. If you work long enough in different roles across different organizations, large organizations, small organizations, different things happen at those organizations based on their size. So, for example, at huge organizations, the most devastating thing for teams is a micromanager. So you'll have a boss who's in a mid-level, boss-level role, and this person basically will nitpick at the things that don't go right. He'll ignore the 90%. She'll ignore the 90% that goes right and nitpick on the 10% that doesn't, and not look at that as a learning. So we're going to improve and be able to tackle that better next time. Those people don't do that. And there's a great quote today on by Chris Donnelly on LinkedIn. It says, "A micromanager is someone you pay to watch your top talent walk away." I think that's an excellent quote. If you've dealt with those folks in the past, you know how toxic that environment can be and how devastating that could be to teams in those environments. This book, however, talks about difficult people that you may be a director of or someone that answers to you versus who you answer to, etc. So we'll go through this quickly and kind of let you know what it says. And it talks about, in the very first chapter, it says, most experienced businessmen and women accept the wisdom of the 85-15 rule, which means 85% of a manager's success comes from his ability to deal with 15% of his or her people. John D. Rockefeller has a ton of great quotes, but here's a good one from him. He said, the ability to work with people is a purchasable commodity, as purchasable as coffee or sugar, but I'll pay more for it than any other ability under the sun. He knew the impact of paying people for results. He did a great job at paying people for results, and because of that, he was one of the richest people in the modern world. So as you go through this, chapter 1 talks about sources of pain. It calls them SOPs in this book, which is kind of confusing, but it's talking about people specifically that are sources of pain. Pain doesn't mean they're stabbing you or doing something physical. It means that they cause you dread each day mentally, or they cause you problem each day because they put a chink in the chain that's running smoothly. It could be one person that devastates a team and is constantly an issue. I call that addition through subtraction. Typically, you can fire that one person and the rest of the team will get along great and do well. I've gone to locations before and fired 2 people and had those same locations month after month after that do extremely well, and we were much more selective in the hiring process after that because they were hiring people that became sources of pain, not part of the team or resolutions or people trying to find resolutions to problems. So sources of pain are not a figment of imagination. They do exist on all levels of an organization. This is true. We tend to misunderstand these people by focusing solely on what they do, not what we do in response to their words and actions. So a lot of times you can create a toxic environment because you dread those people and dealing with them so significantly that you change how you do things. I treat everyone the same. My expectation in my mind is whether I like a person or hate them, they will never know. If they're on a team that I'm responsible for, they'll never have an idea how I feel about them. I will be grading them on the same things I grade others on, and I'll be responding to them in the same way. If you can do that and police yourself on that, you have to be actively policing yourself on that daily, though. But you have to be focused on how you respond to them, not just on how they act. We often amplify the influence of these people by stripping away their positive attributes and overemphasizing their negative characteristics. That can also be called recency bias. You need to make sure that if you're measuring someone, that you're doing the whole, looking at that individual as a whole. I always say make everyone a 10 and let them cut it down from there. Okay, so if you view a person as a 10 when you come in and you try to do everything you can to support them, and hopefully they can see that and be motivated by that support to then try to help others and do that, now you're cultivating something useful out of that environment. But how you act a lot of times is going to impact that greatly. We spread the word about these people in words and actions, and in the process, we ensure a no-win situation which that person cannot make a turnaround, and we cannot back down from our position as its critics. That's the biggest piece on that, is you have to expect, here's my point, if it's not egregious and you're not going to fire them that day, then the expectation is they're going to get better. It's that 20-70-10 rule, where 20% are superstars, 70% are salt of the earth that just do basically all they can to get as little as they can rather than get their paycheck and go home. That 10% you need to be coaching up or coaching out. The first part of that is coaching them up. So that means you're trying to save this teammate. You're trying to get them to a position where they're going to be more useful, not a person who causes pain to the team. We make myths up to account for the behavior of these people. And these myths usually support our point of view, but may have little to do with reality, with their words or with their actions. So sometimes you can become hypersensitive to a person that you see in a certain way. I really police myself around that because I have little patience for stupidity. I have little patience for people that are constantly in the way. Because as you solve a problem and you move on, other problems arise that you then must solve. And by doing that, you're evolving into a better, more effective team, a more effective organization by doing that. So if you have people that are constantly hung up on yesterday and not looking on today and not getting after today's problems, etc., you're not growing as a team. That sometimes can be an anchor and slow the positive motivation down and the positive momentum down. So that's what you have to watch out for. So how you respond to them has to be appropriate, where you can get them to buy in or get out. Estimating personality differences can be a valuable tool in building a complementary working teams. That's very true. And choosing a suitable environment for particular positions. I think that you protect your teams above all. When you take a new person and you put them on a team, you have to be specific that they're going to fit with that team. If not, you can just kill all your productivity right there. That's the problem when tenured teammates go away because you don't pay them enough. That can impact the entire team, because that tenured teammate could have been the glue that was holding the whole team together. So that's why I find it repulsive when companies don't pay their people enough. And when somebody's offered more money to go elsewhere, then the company turns around and wants to pay them what the other people were offering, even though you didn't give them a raise the last 4 years in a row. Now the person's fed up and leaving, and that person may be the glue to the team. How you treat your people needs to be the most important piece of what you do daily as a leader. Okay? Personality traits include the member, the self, the juggler, the planner, the thinker, the emphasizer, the closer, and the researcher. These personality traits, if you look at them, they respond to things differently and they buy and sell differently. So if you know what these traits are and you study what they are and how they respond to things, that may make you a better leader and a better communicator with specific people of your team based on their personality traits. There's tons of books written on that stuff. Take a look. We've gone through several on this channel. Take a look and see if those can help you too. Sometimes that might be what you need. It's improved communication skills to certain personality types. That may be beneficial to you. The third one on this is, in times of stress, personality traits may shift dramatically. A juggler, for example, may become an obsessive planner under certain conditions, saying the conditions can change the way people view things. Understanding one's own personality predispositions can aid in predicting and dealing with constructively with personalities of others in the workforce. A planner, for instance, is likely to conflict with a juggler. Simply knowing that they differ in their approaches, if you teach your team that, it can improve them and typically improve their communication as well. You have to spend that time improving yourself and improving others, reading constantly and expanding your knowledge, watching videos such as these and things like that. You don't have to be out there starting from zero. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that because they don't watch videos like these or read books like these or study these things. This is my study. My library's in the other room. I have, I think, 4,000 volumes now, and I'm reading constantly because, one, it's enjoyable, and two, it's relaxing. It's not a constant screen blinking and carrying on and taking pictures of you while you're reading. That's what the phone does constantly. But what it does is allows you to relax, but I've said this before, it allows you to get this person's opinion without interrupting them. So you'll understand what they think and say and how they see it without any input from you, so it can't be blemished or changed by your point of view. That's why reading is an exceptionally good way to learn things and expand your mind. Difficult personality types can be charted. Paying attention to how involved people are with others and how outspoken they are, you can determine where they fall on some of these personality metrics. After you understand what makes a particularly difficult person tick, settle upon the strategies that are useful to minimize the person's destructive influence on the organization and maximize his or her potential for positive contributions and supportive natures to your team. Apply the lessons learned from the business examples in this book and chapters around difficult people. That's a good suggestion. You can also watch videos such as these and learn those communication factors for yourself. And most importantly, know how you see things. Because if you know how you see things, you can prevent how you respond to things, or you can at least police how you respond to things, which may give you a better result. Make the most of negative performance evaluations by showing evaluations to the person before commenting on them and structuring whatever praise you can include. Here's my point. If you're having constant conversations about performance where it's weekly, you do a one-on-one, there's no time where that will blow up. There's no time where people have to question how they're doing, and also you have more opportunities to shift and make sure they understand the expectations clearly. So make sure those negative performance evaluations, you're showing the full picture and you're sharing that in a way that's not threatening. You want to be supportive until you no longer want that person there because of something they've done that's egregious. Otherwise, you follow your standard write-up procedure and you let them walk themselves out based on those steps. And if that's the case, you just mitigate the damage they can do by the time they're gone. But the better option is figure out how to coach them up so they can reach the level that you're expecting so they can perform and take care of their families. Hire the best from among the rest by asking open-ended questions. They get the candidate talking most of the time and the interviewer listening most of the time. Avoid mushroom clouds and disciplinary interviews by breaking the script of what the disciplined employee expects you to say. Disciplinary actions should be common. The person should believe that you have their best interest in mind. The person should believe that you're honest, should believe that you're not pointed or targeted in any way, and they should believe that you have the whole picture in mind, not just the recent situation. All people go through tough stuff. Okay, that's why recency bias can be so destructive to teams. A great employee can still get divorced. They still can have sick kids. Their parents can die. Their friends can die. They can have issues at home. They could lose their house. They could lose their car. They can have health issues. If you're in a career position at a place long enough, you're going to see everybody go through something like this. So how you respond to them is important. And in this disciplinary interviews around performance, you can hopefully find some resources to help them if they're going through something. That's why it has to be a conversation, not a speech or some type of standing rhetoric around picking at them on how they've done or how they haven't done recently. There's no point for that in the workforce. You're paid to be there. They're paid to be there. Be professional and then go home. It's not personal. But if they have personal issues that are causing them issues at work, but other than that, they're a great employee, then you need to find the resources. A lot of companies have mental support programs now, and that's a part of the healthcare. There's a lot of things you can find out if you're doing these interviews often enough where you can hopefully support an employee, prevent those mushroom clouds, but even better yet, be a champion for them where they can see that you're a servant leader. Okay? We talk about the Bible and in verses here often, and here's the point about that. Servant leadership, that's what Jesus did best. He wanted to take care of the people that were around him. He healed strangers. He went into places where it was dangerous and ultimately got himself put on a cross because he put other people ahead of him constantly. If you do that and try to take care of folks, you're not going to go wrong by that. Try to take care of your team. However, if you have somebody that's poison in that and someone that's deceptive and trying to damage your team, get rid of them. That's part of protecting your team. Communicate termination news in a non-embarrassing way and at an opportune time. Make yourself available to talk, but only after tempers have cooled. So when it comes to termination, I think you do that on Friday. I think you do it in the afternoon after lunch on Friday. I think after the person returns from a lunch break, you sit down with them, you have that conversation. You list out the reasons why. You show the pattern of increased disciplinary action or increased corrective actions that have not had the desired result. And then you let them go at that point. If the person flares up and gets out of control at all, you call the police. Here's my point. Part of building a secure place is showing people that extremes will not be tolerated. So if you're building a secure place to take care of your team, your office team, and your other production people or whoever works in your facility, and someone is flaring up with a temper and acting like it's street life, thug life, all that nonsense, you don't have time for that. And when people see that you protect them, but if something like that happens, you let the police come and handle the situation, they will build that trust in you and they'll believe that, hey, you're going to treat them respectfully and they should treat you respectfully as well. What I always remind people of too is, look, the termination is not the end of the world. It is possible, unless it's egregious, it's possible that I could rehire you in the future. Don't blow that opportunity today because you lose your mind. And at one location, I would not rehire people for 9 months. Because where I live, in 9 months' time, that person is going to go through a struggle and most likely not find another job like that job that pays like that job in that period of time. So they may lose their cars, they may lose their house, they may be kicked out of their apartment. Their wife may leave them. They may take their kids and go live. It can be devastating when someone loses a job. They have to understand, one, they have to take accountability for what they did. They have to understand that they were responsible for putting themselves in that position. And if they do, I will consider a rehire. And we'll review those bad things that went through and led up to that termination. But by doing that, people understand it's not the end of the world. It's going to get difficult. It's going to get very difficult, possibly. But there's a possibility for you to come back if you can work on that and you go away, and that resets how you're seeing your world. Sometimes people grow complacent and can abuse what they have because they don't appreciate it for what it is. So sometimes a separation will help people reset that and understand, oh, wow, I really like that job. It paid me really well. It had great benefits. I really want that job back. What can I do? And have a process in place. My process was you called the plant 6 months later and said you were interested. Then you came in and put in an application. And if you did, and you did the things that you said you were going to do, then we consider that rehire and we take it from there. We'd try them on a 90-day basis after we had that rehire to make sure there was no issues. And if not, if they're back to normal employment and doing what they can do, you don't hold something against them. But termination news should never be embarrassing. It needs to be done privately and professionally. If you're the professional that's doing it, you need to have another professional in the room with you, and it is not to be discussed outside of that room. So when you have that other person with you, when the person comes in, one, I always make sure there's no cell phones on. There's no reason to record the conversation. And you have to make sure you make that known. A lot of companies will have a policy where that actually violates a policy for them to have a phone in a business meeting or an employee type meeting. So just be aware of those things. Communicate the news in a professional way at the right time. The next thing it says in here is conduct valuable exit interviews by choosing the right interviewer, ensuring confidentiality, using gratitude and as a motivator, full disclosure for the exit employee. I think that's a great idea. Exit interviews can lead to some great growth at companies, and they can lead to some sure opportunities. It's just as good or better than a customer complaint or customer feedback like that. Pay careful attention to the signals and symptoms as discussed in this chapter, and may the precursors of physical violence or vandalism of company property. If you call the police when people start to act up, you're going to prevent vandalism or violence. Here's the thing, though. If you don't handle the people appropriately in the time that you should, the damage that they do will increase. As a consultant, I have told people before, call the cops if this person acts this way. And they didn't listen. And so the next weekend while they were away, this person came back and broke in and stole a bunch of stuff. And then they had to call the cops, and that was an initial report. And the cops were like, well, how do you know it was this person? Do you have them on camera? Do you do? And they called the cops like I told them to when the guy came in and broke in and stole the stuff. That would have been reason for an arrest right there. Okay, because you already have it on record that the guy's being a certain way. You could have done a criminal trespass possibly. So if he does come back, he has already committed a crime by being there. So there's tons of different options to do that appropriately. Not that you're trying to hem somebody up, but it's real simple. If you get let go, get gone. Don't come back. There's no reason. Try the next chapter. Try to do better in the next opportunity. Okay, so here is 5 steps toward improved relationships with difficult people. And the book, once again, is Difficult People at Work by Dr. Bell and Dr. Smith, both PhDs. And here are the 5 steps towards improved relationships with difficult people. 1, tell the person you want a better relationship. Ask him or her if they desire that as well. 2, in a non-confrontational discussion, try to define specific steps you can take toward the better relationship. 3, probe for further information. Tell me more about ... I want to understand why ... or how do you feel about ... without judgment, without cutting them off to give your feelings or without showing negative feelings. 4 says take about 1 or more people with whom the difficult person already has a reasonably good relationship. Think about one or more people rather, with whom that person has good relationships with, and what makes that relationship work, and what can you learn from it? What personality traits are those people too? It may be there's certain personalities. And the fifth is make a difficult person your project for progress. Keep personal notes on what you have tried, how things are going, and what you plan to do to make the business relationship more effective. Here's my 2 cents on this in this book. If you work with more than one person where you work, you will have to deal with difficult people at work. It could be because of a thing that the people are going through at the time. It could be because they've been there longer than you. It could be because they've been there shorter than you. You know, there's all these different reasons. I look a certain way. So when I go to places, I try to put my back to the wall and leave the door where people don't feel like they're locked in a room with me. I try not to block the door, etc. Because I'm a large individual. Some people in that find that intimidating. And so when you have teams that you're a large individual, they may not think you care about them because you look big and intimidating and scary. So that's why one-on-ones are important, because those people come in and they understand, oh, he does care. He is asking me these things. It does matter. Or if you're a smaller, diminished person, if you're small, especially small females. I had a leader down in South Florida that worked for me. She was a tiny young lady. She was a college cheerleader, was a flyer. If you guys know anything about cheerleading, those are the ladies that get thrown, 20, 30 feet in the air. And she was a tiny young lady, but she was extremely smart and extremely motivated. And so she was having a hard time impressing upon her team that she was the big leader that they needed. So what I did was I spent time with her doing her one-on-ones for the first 3 months she was there. And so what I would do is I would go in and sit down with her, and she would bring her people in individually, and they would talk to them. And in those conversations, people got to see how smart she was and how sharp she was and how she had better ideas for making them safer and making their work environment better than it was previously. So over time, they got bought in on how great she was because they got to take the time in those one-on-ones where there was no other opinions. It was just her and them. And I was there just for more support. And it was great to watch that team come together and become a cohesive unit. And they did exceptionally well after she got settled in there. In the beginning, too, she was a young leader. In the beginning, she was a little intimidated by the thought of that and the thought of the challenge around that job. But I watched her grow and evolve into an incredible leader. And she's still a great leader today. So understand that what you look like, your personality, how you speak, all that's going to impact people. Doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. People simply view things the way they do. So you're going to have confrontation, period. I'll use Donald Trump as an example. When in the election, there was all these people, he did this and he did that. People don't understand allegations versus crime. So understand that if you're in a leadership position, you are going to have allegations against you at some point. People don't talk about their problems. And so what they do is they let it fester within themselves, and then they'll have an allegation. Well, this person does this or does that, which can be completely unfounded. But you still have to address those things and get through it. And as a leader, you're gonna have harassment claims, you're gonna have racism claims, you're gonna have abuse claims. If you're a leader more than a week, you will see these type of claims. So my suggestion is when you're having the difficult conversations, have your next in line with you in those conversations. So you don't say anything appropriate, or no one can say you did say anything inappropriate because there's another witness in the room. If you do that and you handle it professionally and appropriately and don't discuss those things outside of that closed room, everything will go well. Then you have to watch out for the phones. You have to watch out for social media. You can't post things about people or things on social media. You can't go to their post after that and say. And I've told stories before on how I've had teammates that got too comfortable with the other team. So leadership that got too comfortable with teammates. That arm's length is extremely important. Okay. If you get too familiar, too comfortable with a teammate, and you start sharing personal items with that teammate, that will be used against you. Okay, so you have to be smart enough to know this is professional. I am friendly with them and I do care about them, but I'm still their boss and I have to make sure they're doing things appropriately. So because of that, it's appropriate for me to keep levels of separation. I even do that with bosses that I report to. I keep levels of separation where they don't get too comfortable with me and don't feel like they know me on a certain level. Now that could be detrimental at some point, but here's the point. If you go to a Christmas party with your boss and your other people that are on the same level as you, and you get drunk, okay, and you say something that's inappropriate, or you do something that's inappropriate. Now they have an opinion of you because of one night you did something unprofessional, and now they think you're unprofessional as a whole. You get what I'm saying? It's better to have degrees of separation where you don't have that issue. And so what I did one time, I went to a Christmas party in New Orleans with my team, and it was clear that people were going to get schnockered. Okay? It was clear. And so what I did was I got up and had one drink, walked around the room, shook hands, introduced myself, met people, did all that for about an hour and a half. Okay? When everybody started getting a little loose, I got a phone call. I looked at my phone and said, I got to take this. And I walked out. And they're like, well, come on back and we'll do this, this, and this. And it's like, okay, well, let me take this. I'll be back. I didn't go back. I went to my room. I got undressed as soon as I went in my room, because by doing that, you're not going to be motivated to go back downstairs. Took a shower, got comfortable, and that was my evening. I didn't go back to it. And so later on, people got out of hand a little bit, and some unprofessional things happened. And so I was asked, hey, did you see anything? I was like, no, such and such. I went to my room. I took this phone call and I did not return. So I had a time that I knew I was gone, so I did not participate. But the biggest piece is I was still in a professional light after that. There was nothing that happened that landed on me. It's kind of the point that I want to make. So you have to be choosing those things. And when you're a leader, you have to not put people in those positions where they can be damaging to themselves because you didn't think about that. So there's that too. So I hope you liked the video. Hope you like subject matter such as this. The book, once again, is Difficult People at Work. It is a little old. It's been around for a couple of years. This one was published last in 2004, so 20 years old on the most recent version of that book. But I do think it's got a lot. There's been a lot built around that. There's a newer book called Dealing with Jerks at Work, and that's a little different. That's talking about basically your hierarchy that you report to. But a couple of books to look into there that may help you with that. Hope you like this type of information, subject matter such as this. If you do, like, subscribe, and please share. I'm Ben. Be good.